Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Heumann. I'm the Curator of Education and Public Programs at the Power Plant Contemporary Art Gallery. We're pleased to work again with Art Toronto to present a series of 3 Power Talks during this fair for the 11th year, and we extend sincere thanks to Susanna Rosenstock and her team for working with us to make that possible. The power plant, located at Harbourfront Centre, just a few blocks south of here, presents contemporary art by Canadian and international artists, concentrating on emerging and mid-career artists who have not yet had a solo exhibition in Toronto or Canada. At the end of September, we opened our Fall 2017 exhibitions, featuring the sculpture of Amalia Pica in Ears to Speak Of, photography and film and video by Sami Balogi and Philip de Bock in Urban Now, City Life in Congo. Those are both on view until December 31st. Additionally, we opened a site-specific commission called Demonstration by Michael Landy, which will continue to grow during its months on view through May 13th, 2018. To complement those exhibitions, of course, we offer numerous education and public programs each season on site, and then we have opportunities like now to work with Art Toronto off-site. The power plant is also participating downstairs in Edition Toronto, the 2nd annual art book fair. We're featuring a selection of exhibition-related publications as well as limited editions, and some of those have special prices. This is the first Power Talk this year. Before I introduce today's speaker, I'll hope to entice you to the next 2, which will be tomorrow and Sunday. So tomorrow at 4, we'll hear from Mary Spirito, founding director of Proto Cinema, who will talk us through a few curatorial projects and speak about working with uncertainty and the new role she sees of nonprofits worldwide. On Sunday, also at 4 p.m., Deputy Director and Chief Curator of the Dia Art Foundation, Courtney J. Martin, will examine the question of painting within the discourse of object-based minimalism, making specific reference to Robert Ryman, an exhibition she curated for the Dia Art Foundation in 2015 and 2016. But turning to today, our speaker is, of course, Charles Gaines, and his talk is entitled Systems, Structures, and the Politics of Subjectivity. Recognizing Art Toronto's Focus Los Angeles this year, we felt that having Gaines was an ideal launch to this year's Power Talk series. He's celebrated for photographs, drawings, and works on paper that investigate how rules-based procedures construct order and meaning. In 2014 and 15, a retrospective exhibition of Gaines' work at the Studio Museum and the Hammer Museum was critically acclaimed. His work has also been featured in recent major group exhibitions, including the Freedom Principle in Philadelphia and Chicago, the 56th Biennale de Venezia in 2015, Prospect 3 New Orleans in 2014, as well as the Montreal Biennial in 2014. In 2013, Gaines received a John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Foundation Fellowship. His works, of course, are in numerous museum collections, including the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles, the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York, and the Hirshhorn in DC. He's currently represented by Suzanne Vielmetter, Los Angeles Projects, Paula Cooper Gallery in New York, and Max Hetzler Gallery in Berlin. So please join me in welcoming Charles Gaines to the stage.
So I'm going to, can you hear me all right? Is it okay? I'm going to spend 45 minutes talking about essentially one work. So this is an abbreviated version of the presentation that I usually give. And the work is actually one series, my Manifestos series. And as the introduction indicated, my work is based in systems and structures, and has as its intent to use that to to investigate and interrogate the construction of meaning. My interest in meaning has to do with how representation works in works of art, particularly with respect to political subjects or political content, how the political ideas are constructed, is specifically what I'm interested in. But in general, it is the general semiotics of meaning, construction, and representation. And I use systems to do this. And the reason I use systems is so that I can set aside my own use of my own imagination and will, and turn over the production of the work to the system itself. So, with respect to that, another part of my interest is this interrogation of subjectivity and expression. Two principles that I think are good and useful, but I think have been sort of wrongly used in terms of advancing certain ideas of what it means to make a work of art. That is, that the idea that a work of art is based upon the expression of one's subjectivity, without getting into a long, detailed explanation as to why, but I don't think that's necessarily so. And so I try to displace my subjectivity by turning those decisions over to a system. All right, so in Manifestos, what I've done, I have to advance these slides because I'm going to go by this part of the talk. This moves very slowly. So in Manifesto, well, I'm doing this, I'll just introduce the work. In Manifestos, can you advance that back there? Yeah, to the Manifesto slide. So you're going to miss out on all of this, aren't you sad? Yeah, that's it. Thank you. So Manifestos is a video-based installation. And that's, as you can see here in this installation shot at the Paula Cooper Gallery, it consists of 4 video monitors, and also there are 4 drawings. The 4 video monitors each have a scrolling text of 4 political manifestos. And so as this text scrolls, there's music, and this is the core of the installation. What I do is I select 4 manifestos, in this case 4. I select these manifestos, and I select about a 250, 300 word section of the manifesto, because political manifestos tend to be a little wordy. And I take that text, take its letters, and I translate the letters of the text into musical notation. The translation is very simple. The letters A through G are turned into musical notes. So the letter A, of course, is the note A, the letter B, the note B, all the way to the letter G, which is the note G. And then I also include the letter H that I translate as B flat. And I do this simply, I mean, the idea of translating text into music is not something that's my own invention. It was done during the Baroque era. And as a consequence of that, the Bach brothers had produced some work where text was translated into music. I mean, it actually happened before. It started in Romanesque music. And but they did it, and often for, parlor games and parties. And the letter H was used to honor one of the Bach brothers, Johann or Christian, I don't know which one. But it was there to honor it, so I thought that I would throw that in, and not so much to honor the Bach brothers, but in order to let me have access to more notes. And so you'll see and it's a part of this installation, there's these large drawings. When I translate the text into musical notation, I do it on regular music sheets. And then after I do that, I have these large drawings made of them so that they would be part of the exhibition. This is the section of one of the manifestos called the Indigenous Manifesto, which is probably appropriate here in Canada, since it was a manifesto written by First Nation people. And so if you can see, the letters that you see in the music that make up the words are translated into notes. And if you look at the top line, you see the measure, those measures of notations. Below that are the letters. And so the letters then are translated into notes. The letter, for example, in Indigenous, the first letter is I. And since that is not one of the first 6 letters that are used in musical notation, that becomes a silent beat or a rest. The second letter is an N, and that also becomes a rest. The third letter is a D, so that becomes the letter D, the note D. And then I write that in the music and the staff above it. And it continues all the way through the manifesto. At the bottom, and then this is, we have the accompaniment. We have the music that is written for piano in this case. And so the way that I realize that is, so if you consider the top line as a melody line and the bottom line as the harmony or the accompaniment, the bottom line is written by taking the first note in a letter that is use a musical notation and turning that into a chord. So if you can remember, I mentioned that there was a D note in the word indigenous. So that I wrote the D note and the staff at the top, and then in the music score I wrote a D major chord. So that D major chord lasts or is played when that note is played. There's one other complication there, is that the chord lasts as long as the number of letters in the word, whereas the note only lasts for one beat. Or it's more elaborate than that, but for the sake of time, I'll leave it at that. What we're going to hear, I'm going to play one of these, actually the Malcolm X scrolling text. So what happens is that one at a time during the installation, these texts scroll from left to right. And during that scrolling, the music that the text produces played. Because the piano music that I wrote, I gave to a composer friend of mine to make an arrangement for an ensemble. In this case, it's a seven-piece ensemble, or a 6-piece ensemble. And so we recorded that in a recording studio and attached it as a sound file to the video. And so that music you will hear while the text is scrolling. So yeah, let me see if there's anything else I need to say about this before. Yeah, I think that's all. So remember, because when you hear the piece, I looked like a very honest person at first take, but then when I say that this music is made by a system and you hear the music, it sounds so intentional, you think I'm a liar. So I'm not a liar. It was really done that way. So the reason it will sound so harmonic is because they use a diatonic scale. And diatonic, as a European scale, is intended to be harmonious. It sounds like modern music. It sounds a little Schoenbergian in certain sections, but for the most part, it sounds very organized and very, very ordered and very meaningful. So keep in mind that if the piece reaches a state of meaningfulness to you, that is that you think that there's some legitimate relationship between what you hear and what you're reading, keep in mind that that relationship is a product of the way we bring meaning to things, and not my intention, because I don't know what's going to happen when I'm producing this work. And this goes back into what I was saying about my critique of representation and my critique of subjectivity. Okay, can you play this? Oh, incidentally, it's a 13-minute video. So there are a couple of things about this is that the what you heard was an ensemble with string quartet, piano, and harp, and trumpet. Sean Griffin from Art Pulver wrote the arrangement from my piano music, and the instructions that I gave him is that he can arrange the music. In other words, he can distribute and lay out the melody and the chords in any way that he wants. He just can't add any notes or take any notes away, nor could he change the sequence of notes. So you hear mostly the melody line being played. You heard mostly the melody line being played by the trumpet. So what the trumpet was playing were those letters, A through H, according to a rhythmic pattern that was designed or determined by the words themselves. And the string quartet in the background was playing the chords. And the length of the chord, as I said, was determined by the length of the word, the number of letters in the word. Now, there's a difference between a work that's completely determined systematically and a rule-based operation. And I prefer to look at my work as rule-based because you have to make decisions given about what you're given. So, for example, as Sean shifted the melody from the trumpet to the piano to the harp to one of the violins, the circumstance or the rules say that you're permitted to do this. Now, when I give these talks, I spend first of all about an hour talking about my critique of subjectivity and expressionism, and then when people hear this and see how that rule is played out, they describe. This is what I said. They don't call me a liar. They just said I bend the truth. But they said, well, that's a manifestation of your subjectivity. So your work is not produced by a system. So the way I interpret the rule base and why that's not like expression is because I consider it like if you play chess or any game, checkers, for example, that you have options, but within a set of specific rules. The terms. There are limits and constraints to what you can do. And so for me, it removes the decision moment to moment to use my imagination in order to envision the production of something. Instead, and I do have an imagination, I use it to think about what's being given to me, and then I can work with it within the framework of the rules. Like, for example, in the music pieces, you can play, a pizzicato, you can play forte, triple forte. So those are all decisions that you make that are not governed by the rules of, that not governed by this or not produced by the system, but they are decisions that you can make within the terms of the system. So when you're, it's like reading a map. Should I take Jones Street or Smith Street? I think I'll take Jones. So, but you're operating within a very sort of structured environment. Now, see, the way I look at that is that set of rules is an analogy of ideological. The influence of ideological structures upon us, within which we think we behave freely, but we're not. We're behaving within very specific constraints. The other part I want the other thing I want to make about that is my use of political text, and in this respect. Then to recently that one of the effects of this is that the combination of text and music brings a sense of affect and emotion to the text. And so that suggests that the text is being aestheticized. And so I have this suspicion about the seductive use of aesthetics. which I actually think that it just stops us from thinking. You know, so to make a long story short, my argument is that aesthetics is a very important human experience, but it should not be considered uncritically. It should not just entertain. It should contribute to bringing ideas to pieces. So I had to sort of struggle with that relationship. What about the emotion that's sort of connected with the quite intense political text that these manifestos produce. And Bertolt Brecht wrote something that actually I discovered by reading my son's name's Malik Gaines has just produced a book. He's a performance. He teaches performance at NYU, and he just produced a book. He's also an artist, but in the book he cites Bertolt Brecht, who says that that it's first of all that all art should serve a sort of an ethical or moral purpose. It shouldn't be just entertainment. And but with respect to theater and how affect works in theater, he said that it's art's role to use itself as an experience of mourning. And so I look at the act of mourning as an expressive gesture, but applied to a particular situation, and not just to experience a feeling. And so the affect that's produced by the work helps illuminate the ideas of the work through an experience of mourning, the mourning. Okay, and so I want to play a shorter one, and I want to play this because this is a brand new Manifestos 3 that I'm working on, and in this one I had rather than calling on Sean to do the arrangement of the piece, I did the arrangement myself, and it goes through two stages. First, I translate the text into music, and then I take it to another stage where it's arranged for an instrument. And so in this case, this manifesto is arranged for an instrument, and then that's the piano. And it's a text by Martin Luther King, the speech he gave in England. So let's do that. I mean, this piece is about 6 minutes long. Let's play that one. So my assistant gave me about 20 CDs to bring up to Canada with me, and I left them at the hotel. Dog Without a Bone published the Manifestos 2, and so I was going to try to make all of you buy one. You know. Boy, are you lucky. But if you're interested in the Manifestos 2, that's one of the 4 manifestos that, if you're interested, you can write the Paula Cooper Gallery, or email the Paula Cooper Gallery, and you can get, either they'll tell you how to get one, or they'll send you one themselves. Right? I think we got like 5 minutes for a question. Do you have any?
Yeah, so if you have any questions, just raise your hand and I'll come over to you and give you the mic so you can ask Charles.
I'm always the first to ask a question. Thank you so much for talking about your works, Manifestos 2 and 3. I wonder, you sort of, I'll say, dodged in some ways the direct question about subjectivities. The choice of the texts, why these specific texts. You chose 4 very specific texts. And then, even the arbitrary nature of sort of A, B, C, through F, or through G with H. What happens to the other letters? Just overall, the pacing in terms of the length of the notes, we'll say.
Well, first of all, I'm not against subjectivity. Some of my best friends are very subjective people. So, my problem with it as an ideology is how it's used. Subjectivity comes out of as an invention of the Enlightenment, which has built a hierarchy to the concept of the human, and as a consequence of that, it has formed itself as formed an idea of the universal subject. And the universal subject is a problematic construction because it erases differences, and by doing this, it became very convenient to the Enlightenment project to privilege Europeans above all other differences in that structure. So I think the idea is a brilliant construct. I think that it is often wrongly used, and art is one area where I think it's wrongly used, in that it got to a point where the very idea of art is defined by subjectivity, and only a part of art is produced through the subjective. It is not synchronous with the idea, and so there's been abuses in art with respect to that. So I won't go into the details about that, but just to declare that the idea itself is, I think, is a brilliant invention. So what I'm doing is that I'm trying to remove my imagination out of the process. Now, removing your imagination, in other words, the kinds of decisions that you have to make, like in science, somebody has to come up with a theory, so that theory comes out of your own experience, your own individual experience. So as a scientist, but a scientist is not involved in the subjective practice. So you know that there's subjective activities within science, but science is not driven by the idea, or it's not isomorphic with the idea of subject practice. So my idea of the system is to remove my imagination from those moments when that's usually the defining moments for things to be realized as a work of art. Creating the system does not produce the object. The object is produced by the carrying out of the system. And it's in that aspect of that production, the production of the object, where the idea of subjectivity is most salient in terms of the Enlightenment project, that I want to really dismantle. All right? Similarly, with the other decisions that I make, as I said, that they're rule-based, the things that that individuals choose to do something, but the things that they do are governed by terms and conditions, I should say sort of ideological premises. So that I had to, for example, to decide to use the diatonic scale. I could use any scale, but I used the diatonic scale. I decided to use European-based instrumentation, and so forth. So those are decisions that are unique to me based upon my experience, which is usually where the idea of subjectivity comes from. But they're put into place to produce a machine that then makes the work. All right. So in the way I sort of argue that is that when I undertake these pieces, I don't know what they're going to sound like. I have no idea. And I have no idea, especially because my work is based upon bringing two things that are unrelated and bringing them together. I have no idea how they're going to be brought together. I know that they will because it's essentially the way that human perception works. Human perception works based upon the connecting similarities between things that are different. And but I have no idea as to what's going to be sound. So if I was producing a composition from my imagination, I would hear it in my head first. This I don't hear anything. The first time that I hear these things is when we're in the recording studio. All right. So I offer that as a testimony to the critical factor, where I want to leave a lot of the work open to chance and to indeterminate circumstances and conditions, and not try to produce the work exclusively around my taste. Did I leave anything out?
Well, I think that's pretty good. And I'm a painter. I'm not a musician. I don't work with text. But as I'm listening to this and hearing your words, I'm thinking, okay, so how would this relate to my practice of improvisational painting? And I think there are some similarities in that when I approach my canvas, I have a certain sized canvas. I have limited my palette to some extent. I choose my brushes and then I go at it, and I don't know what it's going to end up like, but by providing those constraints, it sets into motion what's going to happen.
Yeah, this is tricky because the difference between leaving something to chance and leaving something to an intuitive judgment, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between those things. The way I do it is that I set up a set of rules and conditions for production, and I can actually read them off what they are, so that I can't. And in that way, I said that I'm facing a canvas, and the idea of I don't know what I'm going to put on there. The question is that what you ultimately put on it is that something that is driven by your imagination, an image or a vision that comes to you, or an impulse, or is this something that can almost be predicted even before you put on there. You see, so it just has to be executed.
Yeah, because my understanding of creativity has always been that working within constraints, one creates something new. Because if everything were wide open, it's kind of an invitation to chaos.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with you that I think those are the terms that the idea of creativity operates. But I'm making a finer distinction between that and systems work. Usually the set of constraints is determined usually by the genre. So if you're a painter, you're going to work in particular ways, even not from the standpoint of materials all the way to style. You know, you may be a particular kind of painter.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question, if anybody would act.
I don't remember the name of the scientist, but the genetics they take the sequence of a gene, and they play them and they make the music with those 4 letters. Have you heard that?
No, I never heard that.
This was
I'll make sure that's part of my next show.
so this was a seminar I went 20 years ago in an immunology conference, and this guy presented. It was amazing. Like, he put the music on with just this 4 letters, the DACT, and the genes are composed with those 4 letters, and he played the music with those 4 letters. It was amazing. And I never seen this too. It's amazing what you've done.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great. Once again, thank you, Charles, for your talk this afternoon.